everybody. Welcome to another episode of Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing. This is Joe, and I am like so energized right now.
Woo!
Woo! Coming at you, well, I can't even talk. Coming at you with a hot new podcast. I am joined this week by the one and only, the man who has been here every week since the beginning, Cody, and it's just the two of us today. Cody, I'm going to throw it over to you. What have you been up to recently? What's going on? What are you hyped about?
Woo! So many things, Joe. I got to say, just so many things. Now, a few things, but I'll just mention a couple here. We just got back from a wonderful trip that included not only Toledo, Ohio, but also Detroit, Michigan. So really,
probably your definition of wonderful sounds a little sketchy right now, but
going to be hard to top that this summer, but we'll see. But location aside, we went to go see two musicals. We saw Six the Musical, which I knew very little about other than one song from the intro. Was fantastic. Oh my God, it was fantastic. The ladies that did the show were fantastic. The band on stage was fantastic. I had no idea that it was basically a concert. I thought it was more of a show musical, but it was fantastic. Short too. It was only 80 minutes. I was surprised by that. So
nice.
That was really good. And then also very good was our fellow host Matt Hudson's play, which was another musical we went to in Toledo. Sunday in the Park with George, which was the opposite. It was about 2.5 hours long, I would say. It was very long for a play. And had a short intermission in between the two halves as well. And that was at times like a sensory overload, and at times very touching, and at times very funny. And it was a really interesting look in the life of painter George Seurat, the pointillist guy. But that was really good as well. Very, very different. I tried to compare the two after we left, but I really can't pick a better one because they were so different. So those, and then randomly, we have a new brewing development here at the house, which is not a microbrewery in the basement.
I was going to say, you're starting some homebrew?
My wife came home with a couple PlayStations, which I showed you a picture of in the chat, and we're slowly going all in on the renaissance of Dance Dance Revolution here. So we have PS2, and I went on eBay and have won 3 and have 2 auctions left to win 5 different games of Dance Dance Revolution for the PS2. So that'll give us a good 250 songs or so, and then I'm going to start Frankensteining some best methods to put together some dance pads. So you best be ready for some drunken DDR when you stop by next.
Oh no!
Oh yes, up down left, right, left, up.
Oh man, gotta work on my sweet moves.
That's what I'm talking about. So that's what I got going on over here. How about you?
Well, I had one really exciting thing happen recently that I wanted to talk about.
Was it an erection?
No comments. No, last Sunday, a week ago from yesterday, my wife and I traveled to the distant kingdom of Chicago to attend Taylor Swift's Eras Tour. We saw Taylor Swift live and in concert, the hottest ticket in all the land. It was amazing.
That it is.
Yeah, it was a great show. She performed, I believe, 44 songs over the span of almost 3.5 hours. It was just crazy. The stage production, everything was amazing. She sounded great. It was just a great time overall. So,
were you at the one where she swallowed the fly?
I was at the one where she swallowed the fly. It was great. There were 2 fun things like that happened.
Well, I didn't think so.
Pretty early on, her microphone died, and she kind of like vamped and ad-libbed for a minute until someone finally brought her a new one, and it was fun. And then a little bit later, she had a fly into her mouth and swallowed it. And you can find videos of that on the YouTube. It was kind of hilarious. But moments like that really make a live concert experience feel special. And aside from the fact that we managed to get tickets that a lot of people couldn't get. What were you going to say, Cody?
I said, well, I know one of the things that people were praising about the fly swallowing, their little tiny mishaps was just that, like, obviously shows she's singing, which is not guaranteed at some concerts, so.
Yeah, I will say, like, I'm a huge fan of live music, and I try to be keenly aware of whether I feel like people are actually singing live or not. And she definitely was. I think she employs a couple little tricks. Like a lot of her songs kind of rely on like big choruses where there's a lot of like backing vocals and stuff going on.
Okay.
So I think she kind of like she backs off a little bit during those moments, but like all the verses and stuff, like you could tell that she actually is singing live. And he did a few songs where it was just her, like a few where it was like just her and either a guitar or a piano, and like that was all obviously live. I mean, she was a little bit flat a couple times, which I mean I can't blame her for because again she's singing for almost 3.5 hours. But yeah, I was impressed because I could tell that she was singing live. At least the vast majority of the time. And like I have no idea how she does it. Like I was tired just from standing there for that long, so
Yeah.
I can't imagine, dancing and singing and doing that multiple nights in a row. But yeah, it
Now,
was
I got to ask, was it in your top five all time?
ooh.
Because you always say this concert was in my tops, this concert was my tops, and I've heard from other people say it was far and away their best. So,
I mean, I wouldn't say it was my favorite concert I've ever been to. I would say, I mean, it has to be again in a couple weeks. I would say as of right now, probably in my top five.
hmm,
Like definitely one of the more memorable concerts I've been to. And there's just like a weird energy there. Like I think Alexis and I were among the very few people in the audience who were not like literally singing every word to every single song.
okay.
Like everybody there was just I mean, everybody knows Swifties get a little bit, excited, and
hmm
it's borderline cultish and slightly terrifying, but also, kind of a cool experience. Like everybody was just having the time of their lives. So it was just a cool experience overall.
All right.
Um yeah, the only other thing I wanted to mention also on a musical note is another one of my favorite artists, Jason Isbell and the 400 unit, just released a new album called Weather Vanes. And I think Jason Isbell is one of the greatest singer songwriters of our generation. Um, he started off kind of doing like Southern rock. He was actually in a band called Drive By Truckers. And I think like 15 years ago now at this point, started releasing solo albums. And his new one, which again is called Weather Vanes, is among his best. It's just a fantastic collection of songs. He tends to deal with, a lot of issues that are happening in the world. He's got one song that is very much concerned with being a parent in a world where school shootings keep happening. And even though I'm not a parent myself, it kind of makes me feel some feelings. So definitely recommend listeners check that out. But enough about music. That's enough about stuff that's going on. I want to talk about why I was so hyped up in the introduction to this episode, why I'm just so fired up and excited to be here.
It was Monday.
It is
You love your show.
because, ladies and gentlemen, and people of genders in between, today we are talking about cocaine. That's right. Cody and I are both on cocaine right now. I mean, no, not that. Just kidding. Neither of us is on any drugs. No, we are talking about cocaine as it pertains to the classic motion picture, which I believe was an honorable mention on my list of most anticipated films of the year. We are talking about Cocaine Bear.
Cocaine Bear.
Cocaine Bear.
I just checked my list. It wasn't on my list.
I mean, what can we say about Cocaine Bear that the title Cocaine Bear does not already say about Cocaine Bear?
Right?
It's a movie came out last year. Or was it earlier this? No, it's this year because we
That was
did the
just
podcast.
this year, yeah.
Came out earlier this year. Directed by Elizabeth Banks, which is kind of interesting.
Right?
She's mostly known as a comedic actress, but she has directed a couple things. And it's based on a true story, which, I mean, wrap your mind around that. Do you know anything about the true story behind Cocaine Bear?
Not really. Just
All right. Let me tell you the true story. about Cocaine Bear.
Okay.
Here's the true story about Cocaine Bear.
Tell us about it.
They found a bear that was dead and it had a bunch of cocaine in its stomach. And that's literally the entire story that inspired this movie.
Oh.
There is a little bit more to it. There was a drug dealer who dropped a bunch of cocaine out of an airplane and then fell to his death when his parachute failed to open. And subsequently, in the area where he had dropped all the cocaine, they did find this. Apparently, the actual cocaine bear, I think, was like 175 pounds. So it was a much smaller bear.
At that point.
And
habits will do that.
They found like a bunch of open cocaine packages around it and subsequently found like 40 pounds of cocaine in its stomach. Like it literally, its entire stomach was just bloated with cocaine. But that's the extent of the story. There was no rampage or anything. But inspired by those events,
the real story,
the true story of Cocaine Bear was told in this motion picture of the same name. And the movie does start with the drug dealer dropping cocaine out of an airplane, presumably to, go recover it and further sell it. We get this opening scene with Matthew Rhys as said cocaine dealer. He's having a great time, just like throwing these drugs out the plane, and he's getting ready to jump out himself. And in the movie, he hits his head on the edge of the plane and things just don't go well for him. I was curious, what did you think about that opening sequence in terms of just like, what did it set as your expectations for the movie, like just tonally?
Yeah, it's interesting because they set up this dude who's like all suave looking and he's going to make this daring dash out of the plane as it's flying by. And then it doesn't go that way at all. And it kind of, it's interesting because it kind of sets the tone a little bit in that things don't go the way you think they're going to go in this movie. But it almost felt like a different type of tone than the rest of the movie to me. Like, I don't know, like this was like over the top humor almost. And there's definitely a lot of humor in this movie, but it didn't seem like that kind of movie to me necessarily.
Oh, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, honestly, this opening scene got me more excited to watch the movie because it does seem so over the top. Like Matthew Rhys, the actor here, seems like he's just having the time of his life. And I was like, all right, this is the kind of movie it's going to be. And whether or not it was that kind of movie is something that we're definitely going to talk about. Interesting side note, for anyone who has seen the television series The Americans, this movie weirdly serves as a reunion for 3 of the cast members of that series. Matthew Rhys and his real-life wife, Carrie Russell, who's one of the main characters in this movie, are the 2 stars of The Americans. And Margot Martindale, who plays the park ranger in this movie, is also a major character on that series.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Anyway, I'm just going to do like a very brief plot overview, and then we can maybe talk about scenes we liked and whatnot.
Yeah, go ahead. We should point out, too, we got some comments here from our hosts, Brett and Justin, who were both supposed to make it at various points, but the Cocaine Bear took them when they weren't watching.
They just could not hang with Cocaine Bear. He just passed out on top of Justin, and Justin couldn't escape.
It's true.
Well, Justin actually had a comment about the opening scene. He said, "Is this the true story of D.B. Cooper?"
I actually kind of got that vibe, too, from the opening scene,
I could see that. I mean, airplane heist of sort.
Like you said, this whole time.
I mean, like you said, he kind of has like a suave look about him, like a man about the world, which is kind of how DB Cooper is depicted. So I could see that. But after this opening sequence, we get a scene where there's a couple that's out hiking and they get to this like summit and they're looking around and they spy this bear off in the distance. But actually, I think there's text maybe before that says like black bears are mostly harmless, and if you encounter one in the wild, the advice is to actually try to fight back because odds are you'll scare it off. Like they're just not really known to attack humans. But if it's like a brown bear, you're supposed to play dead and
Oh
hope you don't
yeah,
get destroyed.
like
So that
brown lay
comes up
down,
again.
black attack back, or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. So we have this couple, one of whom is played by the actor who plays Tormund Giantsbane in Game of Thrones. That's what I know him from anyway.
Yeah, that's kind of fun.
Um, and they spot this bear, and I think the woman is kind of nervous or something, and it's like, oh no, it's a black bear, so we don't have to worry about it. If it's black, fight back, whatever. And the guy's looking at it through binoculars, and it's like, oh, there's something wrong with it. I think it's demented or something. And all of a sudden, this bear just like charges at them and attacks them, and it doesn't really go well. Um, and that's kind of our first introduction to the titular cocaine bear.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I mean, to me, that scene kind of like, I feel like that was also setting a tone. Like, to me, that's setting up like this is going to be a ridiculous movie that's just about this coked up bear like rampaging and killing people.
Yeah, for sure. We get the like classic tech splash on the screen. It's like,
Yeah.
cocaine bear.
But I mean, from there, I feel like there are really kind of two plot lines that emerge in the movie. Um, Carrie Russell plays a character named Sari, and she has a daughter who she apparently has been wanting to go to this like waterfall for a long time, and they're supposed to go there together, but then Carrie Russell has to go into work, so she leaves the daughter home alone, and the daughter ends up like running off with one of her friends to try to go find the waterfall like by themselves. And they kind of they encounter Cocaine Bear, and trouble ensues.
Trouble ensues.
And so, I mean, the plot line that kind of ends up with Carrie Russell going to the forest to try to find her daughter, and shit kind of goes wrong. We also have a plot line with two drug dealers played by Alden Ehrenreich and O'Shea Jackson Jr., and they are sent to try to recover the cocaine that was dropped by the dealer because he worked for this like drug syndicate, and they're going to be in a lot of trouble if they can't find this product because it was a buttload or a bear load, if you will, of cocaine.
Hey-o.
And their boss is played by the late great Ray Liotta.
This was his last role, is that correct?
I believe this was his last movie.
Yeah.
So he dispatches these two to go recover the drugs, and as the movie goes on, the two storylines kind of intertwine. But I feel like those are kind of the two main plot lines, and then they both intersect with Cocaine Bear at various points.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Just kind of the two paths that occasionally will overlap, but there's a couple side characters that join both of them on their quests as well. Their quests.
I mean, so I kind of wanted to just, aside from those general plot lines, talk about a couple scenes that were like memorable or stood out to me. I mean, for me, the big one is when the kids who ran off encounter Cocaine Bear. Well, first they encounter cocaine, and it's kind of this funny scene where it's like, is this drugs? Oh, is it? I think it's cocaine. Like, they apparently were paying extra attention in Dare class or something.
Yes.
And it's like I will say, I think one of my favorite characters in this movie was it Henry? The kid, the like male kid who's Carrie Russell's, Henry.
Yeah. The boy,
he's like the friend of Carrie Russell's daughter, and he's just like trying to talk tough, like I do drugs all the time. Like when I do cocaine, blah blah blah. So the two kids kind of like dare each other to eat cocaine because they think that's how you do it for some reason. And by opening the package of cocaine, they attract the attention of the Cocaine Bear.
He can smell the cocaine from quite a ways off,
He
it looks
can
like.
he can smell cocaine from miles away. Which I
It's
just I think that's one of my absolute favorite things about this movie is going into it, I was assuming that the story was just this bear does cocaine and just goes on a rampage as a result of that initial encounter with
mm,
cocaine. But it turns out once he does it the first time, he just like fucking loves cocaine.
hooked.
Like his driving motivation throughout this movie is not necessarily just to murder people as much as it is to just get more cocaine. Because boy does that cocaine bear love cocaine.
He sure does.
Um,
That scene in question here, we got a comment from Brett on this one.
yes,
He said, "Who in the world eats anything off a knife blade the way those kids ate the cocaine? Except for Heath Ledger's Joker, of course. Poking a slice of apple with a knife and eating the apple off the tip? Sure, no problem. Putting basically the entire blade inside your mouth and closing your mouth around it made him queasy in a way he didn't want to think about. It was kind of awkward.
yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, like, I don't know if those kids have seen well, because if they had seen movies with people doing cocaine, they probably would have known to snort it instead of eating it.
Yeah.
Because, like, I've definitely seen, especially '80s movies where someone like cuts open a bag of cocaine with a knife and then snorts it off the edge of the edge of the knife. But I think he makes a good point that it is weird for someone to just like mouthify a sharp knife blade like that.
He also said he enjoyed that somewhat early on in the film, they right away made it clear that the film wasn't going to take itself seriously. So he was able to just sit back and watch it for what it was worth without having to nitpick at what they did not do
Did
wrong. So,
did they make that super clear though?
well, I mean, that's kind of what I was getting at from that intro scene on the plane is like, I felt like it was going to be one tone of comedy and then it ended up being a little bit
Yeah,
different tone. So I don't know, but
I agree with you. We'll talk about that, I think, more when we get to like general thoughts. But um, so the kids, cocaine bear, they run off. The mom ends up going to the national forest and encounters the park ranger Liz, played by Margot Martindale, who I mentioned before.
she was pretty good.
I was going to ask what you thought about Liz as a character.
As a character, I didn't really love her, but as an actress, I thought it was pretty good, pretty fun.
Yeah, she's really weird. Like she's got I forget the guy's name who's like an animal expert who she seems
Yeah.
to have the hots for. And it's like she's more interested in trying to like make time with this guy than helping this woman find her lost kid.
Yeah, she didn't seem to want to do her job in any way, shape, or form.
No.
So that
Yeah,
was
she just like has no fucks to give about that. So they they all venture out to try to find the kids, and they end up finding Henry, who has climbed up a tree to hide from the bear. And the guy, the animal expert or whatever, keeps like spouting off facts about bears and black bears.
yeah.
And I thought that was all kind of great.
Do this, don't do that.
But my favorite thing about all that was actually, where's this quote I have? So Henry's up a tree. The guy, the bear expert, ends up inhaling some cocaine, and he ends up climbing up another tree. And cocaine bear, there's this exchange where it's like, "Why'd you climb that tree?" He's like, "Bears can't climb trees," and the expert's like, "Yeah, they can." And cocaine bear ends up climbing up that tree and murdering the shit out of that guy. And then Henry the kid is like, where's this quote? That was so messed up. That little man was an expert on bears, but he didn't know that bear was the cocaine bear. That's that's where we get the title for the movie. So that's cocaine bear. Um. Anyway, they go off and like end up getting a lead on where the daughter is, and turns out that she's in a cave where, spoiler alert, there are some cocaine cubs.
Cocaine Cubs.
Um, but then in the other storyline, we've got Alden Ehrenreich and O'Shea Jackson Jr., and they also arrive at the National Forest. They encounter this group of like delinquents.
Yeah, teenage delinquents.
Which, what did you think about those guys?
Um, kind of mixed, honestly. The opening, the scene where they try to rob the guy, I thought that scene was fine.
Yeah.
And then the scene later in the movie when the two are in the ranger's office, I thought that was fine, but I didn't particularly care for the guy who went on most of the adventure with
Oh,
them.
I love that guy. I thought that guy was great. He's just so weird. Like I thought,
very awkward with his advice and
I
how he
know, but
connects to
like
Han Solo.
I don't know. Maybe you didn't spend as much time in Gwyn as I did when we lived in the UP. I feel like he he perfectly captured a very specific type of like weird, creepy redneck guy. I don't know. Like he's like he gives off this like natural, like off-putting, uneasy vibe, but he's ultimately harmless. Like I don't know. It felt like a very specific but like very real type of person to me, and I kind of liked it.
Okay.
Um. Anyway, so they kind of go off. They get wrapped up in all this too. Liz, I should mention the park ranger in the same time that her friend gets eaten by the bear. The bear also like takes a chunk out of her ass.
Oh yeah.
And she ends up going back to the ranger station to try to call for help. And there's a whole scene there with her and one of the other delinquent guys. They get a visit from Cocaine Bear, and there's kind of a surprising moment where so she's got a gun because she tells us that as a park ranger, she's like a law officer and she's legally allowed to kill people.
Yeah, she is.
And she does just that. What did you think about this moment where she's aiming a gun and she tells this like teenager to open the door and she actually just blows his freaking head off?
I thought that part was actually pretty awesome.
I thought that was pretty great too. Yeah, so that happens. The ambulance shows up. More people get attacked by Cocaine Bear. Liz, the park ranger, has a pretty gruesome ending.
Oh my god, let's talk about that death. That
go for it.
Might be my favorite part of the whole movie.
Oh, really?
She's in this show. So after the attack on Ranger Station 1.0, 2.0, she's in the back of the ambulance because we now have ambulance drivers in the scene as well who come out to this to like, why did they originally go there? Because she was hurt. Is that what they originally called for?
Yeah, I think she called because she had gotten like injured by the bear. So yeah,
by the bear. Okay, and then the ambulance comes in just thinking this is like a routine thing, which that was all pretty good too. It's like this guy and this girl who, just national park, and we got a routine call, and they show up and open up the ranger. Yeah. Well, they can't open up the ranger door because there's a dead body from the guy she shot in front of it.
I mean, it's not just a dead body. Like literally half his head is missing. It's like pretty gruesome.
Pretty gruesome scene when they walk in there. Period. And then they the female ranger was trying to take care of the female paramedic was taking care of the ranger, and the male paramedic. I think,
like when she first walks up, isn't the ranger still like holding the gun at her, and she has to like get her to? Am I making that up?
Maybe I don't remember. I just remember her being on the ground, like unable to talk. But then
the other guy, go on.
He opens up this door in the back, and there's like this darkened room in the back of the ranger station, and it's just like, eventually you see that it's Cocaine Bear just like chewing down on the other teenager, right? So I think it was back there, yeah. So these teens are both dead. They get the lady strapped on. They shut the door for Cocaine Bear, and then they get the ranger in a gurney into the back of the ambulance. And then, long story short, as the ambulance is trying to leave this park, they have Cocaine Bear chasing after the ambulance, which was kind of fun to begin with. But there was just this super brutal death, which I just fucking loved. So you got the ranger strapped on her back on the gurney, as always happens in movies, and the whole thing essentially rolls out of the back of the ambulance as it's going, and it's like this brief moment where it's like vertical before it flips, and just like she comes down hard on her face and just like slides across the pavement. Oh my god, it was so gross, but it was so awesome.
I was honestly really glad that that wasn't even more graphic. Like I feel like they gave us just enough. Because you
don't see necessarily it, but just the idea of what's
but you know what happens there. Like, it's definitely enough.
Yeah, that was rough.
Um,
Loved it though.
yeah, it was. I mean, it was like I honestly give them props for having like a unique death in this that wasn't just like someone getting mauled by Cocaine Bear.
Yeah,
And I mean, just that setup is not something that you really would expect or would see often in movies.
that's a good point. It was
Um,
definitely a unique death I had never seen. Probably why I was like,
yeah.
that's awesome.
So that all goes down. Sari, Carrie Russell's character, and Henry the Kid find a basically trail of breadcrumbs. It's paint that the daughter had left. Like I mentioned, they find her in a cave with cocaine cubs. Meanwhile, there's some shenanigans that happen with the drug dealers, and there's a cop who's been like trying to work the case. Some shit goes down there. The hooligans had basically hidden some drugs in a gazebo, and the cop finds it before the drug dealers get there. And he's up on top of the roof, and they have this kind of standoff. And then Cocaine Bear shows up, and you're kind of wondering what's going to happen. And what does happen is Cocaine Bear ends up passing out on top of Alden Ehrenreich's character, Eddie, which was one of my favorite parts of the movie.
That was
It
pretty
just,
good.
this like, I should say, I mentioned earlier that the real life Cocaine Bear was like 175 pounds. Movie Cocaine Bear, they say, is like 750 pounds. So it's this like really big bear. And it just like passes out on top of this guy, and he's like stuck under it. They're trying to figure out if it's dead or not. He says, at one point, he says something like, something about Cocaine Bear being female. And someone's like, how do you know? And he's, because her vagina is on my ear.
Uh,
Uh, so
I thought everything at that gazebo was probably my favorite scene in the movie. Actually,
I would agree with that. Yeah, I thought it was all pretty great.
it was good tension between like the cop versus the gangsters and the drug dealers, and then the
Yeah,
teen there and standoff and the ridiculous
yeah,
situations where they're like, can I go do this? Yeah, 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 go do that. Still
yeah. There's
while he's
kind of there.
covering him off from the top.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Well, because there's like because O'Shea Jackson Jr.'s character David gets a gun. So him and the cop have this like standoff, and then he's like, "Can I go see if that bear's actually dead?" And yeah, they're kind of trading off like that. This is where another moment where we learn how much the bear loves cocaine, because I believe the cocaine kind of wakes it up, and
Yeah,
they discover that they can use the cocaine to distract the bear. Um, and it ends up, I forget exactly what happens, but it like ends up running off, I think. But Ray Liotta's character shows up and kills or shoots the cop at least.
yep,
And that's when, I mean, Ray Liotta's character, even more so than Cocaine Bear, is kind of the big bad in this movie, as it turns out. Like he plays kind of an over the top villain where he just wants to get the drugs so he can get the money, and he ends up kind of even turning against like his own employees because they're kind of like, they seem a little hesitant about the extremes that he's trying to go to.
what'd you think of the female cop? Because I don't know why that character was really in the movie.
I don't know why that character was in the movie either. I mean,
Okay,
I think that's a valid point. Yeah, I mean, she has like one scene, I think, with the other cop, and then shows up again to betray him, and it's like
yeah.
supposed to be this, shocking betrayal, but it's like, who cares, because we don't know who she is or who
I
these
guess
characters are.
she's like dog sitting for the cop in the movie, but I guess maybe she only goes there to make sure the dog is there. It was like a way to
Yeah,
move it from point A to point B, which that wasn't necessarily need to be
yeah,
there. But
I agree. She didn't need to. Anyway, we get this kind of climactic confrontation where everybody ends up in the cave
by the
where cocaine,
waterfall,
by the waterfall, and there's some dissent among the drug dealers. Ray Liotta's crew basically turns on him and is like, "Let's just get the fuck out of here." And he's like hell bent on recovering as much cocaine as possible. And long story short, he tries shooting Cocaine Bear, and it looks like maybe it works. But because Cocaine Bear loves cocaine so much, well, I should say, Harry Russell and the two kids jump off the waterfall and escape.
Yay.
And Cocaine Bear falls down this ledge off this cliff, and we think maybe she's done for. But then this bag of cocaine breaks open, and there's cocaine swirling throughout the air. And much like Popeye with a can of spinach,
Good analogy. Yes.
the cocaine bear just, you see this cocaine swirling down towards her nose, and she inhales it into her nostrils. It is just brought back to life because cocaine is so powerful and amazing. And she climbs back up, and her and her cubs manage to just murder the shit out of Ray Liotta's character. They end up like disemboweling him,
Yeah,
and
they do.
like chowing down on his insides, and everyone else gets away. Eddie and David, the two guys who were working for him, it seems like they're gonna like drive off and live happily ever after. Oh, I forgot to mention there is that thing where David gets two fingers shot off.
Oh yeah.
Which that was funny because it's two fingers that aren't next to each other, and
Yeah.
someone's like, "How'd you even manage to do that? Those fingers weren't even next to each other."
Yeah.
And the dog eats his fingers. It's great. Anyway, that's kind of the end, really. We do get, there's a couple mid-credit sequences where we see, I think the first one is I think one is, well, I think the movie actually ends with like another couple seeing Cocaine Bear and her cubs. And it's, is that like the ending proper? I think.
I can't remember now.
I
Maybe?
think that was it, where it's like they see that, and then they're like, "Oh, it's a bear and her cubs," and then both
Full
Cocaine
cycle.
Bear and her cubs like stare them down, and like we get the sense that they're going to attack. And then there's two mid-credit sequences. I think one is the one where it's Eddie and David like pulling up to Eddie's house, and he's going to be reunited with his kids, and they've got the dog, and like I think that's where the dog actually eats David's fingers. And he's like, they were going to reattach him anyway.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The first scene it says is when Stash, who's the blonde teenager, makes it out alive.
Oh, that's the first scene. Yeah, we see Stash like hitchhiking,
Oh,
and he
that's
gets picked
right.
up. He gets picked up by a truck that has a bunch of sheep in the back, and he's got a duffel bag full of
Oh
cocaine.
yeah, that's right.
And at first, he throws the duffel bag in the back with the sheep, and they start go, or he gets in the truck, and then he hops out and grabs it again because he doesn't trust any animals with his cocaine.
And then apparently there's a last super secret thing after the credits.
Really, what's that?
I didn't see it. It's after the credits are done. There's the sound of a bear growling.
Oh, yeah, I did read that. I didn't bother watching because of that. Anyway, that's Cocaine Bear. I just spent way more time than I wanted to recapping it, so I apologize. But
Cocaine Bear.
what were your overall thoughts on the motion picture Cocaine Bear, Cody?
It sucked.
What?
It was, it had a lot of fun parts too. I mentioned that gazebo scene was really great. I just loved that ambulance death, and just
that was pretty good.
There were some just shocking moments, like you said, where the guy just had his head shot by the park ranger, and some pretty funny lines in the movie as well. I pulled up a website here with some quotes from the movie, and it completely not measuring accurately how funny this movie was, has like 400 quotes from this movie. They're like, these are so good. And I'm like, there was not that many good ones.
There are not that many good quotes in Cocaine Bear.
I love the disembowelment scene of Ray Liotta towards the end there as well. Didn't mention that. I wrote down in my notes that I also liked the scene with the bear crawling and humping. What scene was that? Was that when he's like scratching, or she? It's the she, I guess, technically.
Yeah.
Was like doing that thing where he's like walking on her back, maybe.
Well, I think when she, either before or after she passes out on Alden Ehrenreich, I think she kind of humps him a little bit.
Yeah, that must be what it was then.
Actually, I was going to say, I got to give some props to Alden Ehrenreich because I thought he was pretty good in this movie. Best known as the only Han Solo that this podcast recognizes. Best known as playing Han Solo in the motion picture Solo: a Star Wars story. He got a lot of negative feedback for that movie, and rightly so. He wasn't great in Solo, but I thought he showed decent range in this movie, and I thought he was actually pretty fun in it.
Um, didn't think he was great in this.
Well, agree to disagree. I mean, I'm not saying he was amazing, but I thought he
You
was
know
pretty
who
good.
else I didn't think was great in this movie?
Who's that?
But I don't blame Carrie Russell for that. But Carrie Russell,
Well, I
she just didn't
mean,
really seem to fit the movie. Like it seemed like they were like, and Carrie Russell,
I
who
wouldn't.
has a little plot with very little to do with. I don't know.
That ties into my biggest reaction to the movie, which I feel like you would agree with. I felt like Carrie Russell was in a completely different movie from everyone else.
Yes, her
Like I felt
scenes and her
like
tone, like none of it matched.
no, and this was my biggest problem with the movie is that I felt like she was acting as if she was in a serious movie.
Yes.
Like everything with her, it felt like she was just taking it super seriously and like it was trying to be like a real movie where she's trying to get her kid back and like, like a dramatic thriller movie.
Yeah, even the scenes with like her and Cocaine Bear together, of which there's not a lot,
Yeah.
like she's still acting like it's not the type of movie everyone else is acting
Yeah.
like it is. No, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. Like, so there's that, but then there is also this other stuff that's way like ridiculous and over the top. And to me, those two things never really felt like a cohesive whole.
I agree.
And like that was, I mean, that's my biggest criticism of the movie. Like you said, there are several fun scenes in it. Like I thought anytime Cocaine Bear was doing cocaine and messing shit up, I thought it was a great time. But I felt like too much of the movie was not that, and it felt like this more serious whatever Carrie Russell was doing, and it didn't all really come together for me in the end.
Yeah, she was in like a Lifetime movie about a mom trying to rescue
Yeah,
her kids in the
exactly.
wilderness or something, and
Yeah, that's a great way to put that.
everybody else was not in that movie. Everybody else was in The Hangover with a bear.
Yeah, that's fair. So, and I mean, I think based on the trailer and like based on that opening scene with Matthew Reese being a goofball on the airplane, I was expecting it to be just like a crazy over the top, tug in cheek, like ridiculous action move or, comedy, horror, whatever.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really that, at least all the way through. So, I mean, I guess, do you have any other like overall thoughts before we get to maybe Justin and Brett's thoughts and our ratings?
I just wanted to praise the music, at least from the standpoint of they hit home with me unknowingly, of course. But the opening scene is Jane by Jefferson Starship, and that's big wrestling theme I mentioned by guy named Orange Cassidy right now in AEW comes out to that. So it's kind of an iconic theme for us and our family. So I was listening to that in the garage the
Nice.
other day when I was watching this, and I was like, holy shit, they're starting this. Because usually they have him wrestle first on Wednesdays. So that's like how the TV show starts on Wednesdays. And the movie
Yeah.
started that way too. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. And then the end of the movie, they finish with White Lines by Grandmaster Melly Mel, and which was funny because I looked at that song this year in my elective class as well that I taught, which is about cocaine, obviously. But it's funny because it's like was produced like with the government's help as like an anti-drug anthem of the
That's funny.
80s. And so I was like, oh, this is kind of funny. But if you just listen to the song and pick up the White Lines part, like it was a good fit for that. But
Nice.
I was like, this is kind of backwards. It's kind of funny though.
Nice. Justin did also mention he just said pretty solid soundtrack, which I agree it was pretty good.
Actually, I can't remember the songs beyond those two. Were there any during the movie?
I was just looking that up right now. It looks like there were a few. There was some Depeche Mode in there. Let's see. Oh, On the Wings of Love,
Hmm.
which That song's always a bit of a jam. There was some Berlin in there, which I don't think I registered because I don't really know them aside from their classic Top Gun anthem, Take My
Me,
Breath
me,
Away.
me, me, me.
The Commodores, Slim Whitman.
Wow.
So yeah, they had some needle drops in there.
Hmm.
Yeah, pretty good soundtrack overall.
I don't remember that too much here. All right, you want to do some other thoughts here from the other guys?
Sure. Do you
You want
want
me
to
to?
read Brett's or
Yeah,
do you
I'll
want
tell
me
you
to
what
do
else. I'll
Justin?
tell you what else Brett has
Tell me
here.
what Brett said.
You want me to do his final wrap up as well, or save that for a moment?
Let's maybe do his thoughts up to that,
All
and
right.
then we'll do the final wrap ups all together.
Okay. Other miscellaneous notes from Brett, who's not here with us tonight. He starts his notes off with the line, "You got a dusty beaver here," catching him off guard, and he thought that was actually a pretty funny line in the movie. He also mentioned the bit with the cop managing to shoot off the two fingers with one bullet when the fingers weren't next to each other. He said it was so absurd it had me rolling in laughter. And then he said, "I love the moment right at the end where the bear spits out a bullet like she was the Incredible Hulk or something. No idea how it even got to that point. Like, did the bear catch the bullet with its teeth? Either way, it was just another absurd moment that was fun, but wouldn't have worked at all if the movie was taking itself seriously." Other thoughts here from Brett. He said, "I enjoyed that somewhat early on. They made it clear again it wasn't taking itself seriously." I said that one. Some seriously gruesome deaths in the movie with variety and a bit of creativity too, not just bear tears out intestines, rinse, repeat, which kind of echoes what you said. Brett praising the CGI here. He said he didn't know if they used any animatronics for the bear or if it was all CGI, but he
What?
thought it looked real good.
Okay, so that's hilarious because one of my notes is I love how bad the bear CGI is.
I thought there was, I'm in the middle of you two. I thought it was good for most of the scenes, but there was in particular one sequence, I can't remember what now. Maybe it was the ambulance chase or something where I was like, this doesn't look right.
I
But
There were a couple scenes where it's like coming right at the camera where I honestly thought it looked pretty terrible throughout the entire movie, but I felt like that was intentional to give it more of like a B movie feel. I don't know.
hmm. Well, for him, he said most realistic fake bear I can remember seeing.
Wow.
So take that, Fozzie. Okay, and then he said favorite death. For him, it was the gangbanger who looked like he just walked off the set of the Sandlot sequel, reminding me of the T-1000 from Terminator 2.
I believe that's the guy who gets his head blown off.
That makes sense. What's Justin have for us?
Man, I having kind of previewed Justin's thoughts, I feel like Brett and Justin watched a different movie than you and I did.
Hmm.
Uh Justin said, overall, this movie feels like it was made in a different era in a good way. I've seen a lot of recent films that have tried to recapture the reckless abandon of 80s schlock, but almost all of them try too hard and fail. It works because it doesn't pull any punches. There's no, we can't show blood because we need to keep a PG-13 rating, or we can't have kids swearing and talking about drugs because it might offend someone. They just go for it, and it's a more enjoyable movie as a result. And then he said that the cast all look like they're having fun. Apparently, he didn't notice that Carrie Russell does not look like she's having fun. And again, pretty solid soundtrack. And that's all he had before his final notes, which should we just get into it now or?
Yeah, we can. We can wrap this up. Let's see what everybody thought. So we'll start with them, I guess.
Well, let's start strong with Henry.
Okay.
After a week that started with a ton of technical difficulties at work and ended with pretty much every one of my plans for the weekend getting canceled, I did a bunch of cocaine and watched this movie, and wow, I felt a lot better. He didn't say that. Every one of my plans getting canceled, Cocaine Bear ended up being exactly the bloody, hilarious whirlwind of violent catharsis that I needed. It's far better than I expected, and it's earned a place up there with the likes of Bullet Train, Sisu, and Army of Darkness.
Wow.
Interesting that there's two such recent ones in that list. As a film that I could see myself putting on after a shitty day and knowing I'd feel better afterward. Justin gave Cocaine Bear a rating of 9 out of 10.
Wow. That's
What
high
did Brett
praise.
have? That is very high praise.
Yeah, you're mentioning that's pretty high rating for him, especially.
Yeah.
9 out of 10. All right. Well, Brett has a final wrap up for us here as well. He said, I had a good amount of fun watching this. The early scenes where we're getting to know the characters and setting up the plot are not great. The humor was just okay, if not a little mild. I could have used some more from the characters to make me like them more, but everything does get better once all the characters actually get to the forest. The action sequences were pretty good. Some of the moments with the bear were actually fairly terrifying. A lot of the deaths were wild and or unexpected. I had several big laughs or moments where I was just floored by what I was seeing. Everything said, it delivered on what I was expecting, so I was not disappointed. This is a movie I would be happy to see again sometime. So this is very similar sounding to Justin's write-up,
Yeah.
although Brett is only going to give this movie a 7 out of 10, though.
All right.
So we're down to an 8 average. Dun dun
What
dun.
what are your final thoughts, Cody?
My final thoughts are I was thinking about how to rate this one because I think the parts that I really enjoyed about this movie were actually uh it had some high highs. Let's put it that way. It had some high highs, but overall for the average of the movie, it was fun, but I didn't think it was all that special other than those moments that I enjoyed. I pointed out the couple music parts I enjoyed, the couple of the deaths I really enjoyed, some of the scenes, especially the gazebo standoff. I liked that quite a bit. But I agree with what we said earlier. Like some of this just felt like you said it was like two different movies almost. When Carrie Russell, it's what I was saying when I mentioned her. Like I don't necessarily fault her because I feel like Elizabeth Banks directing this had to be like, this is your daughter. You have
Yeah.
to go save your daughter from the woods. And so Carrie Russell was like, all right, I'm in character. I have to get my daughter from the woods. But like nobody told her that there was this really bizarre, fucked up movie going on
Well,
around
I
her.
mean, I think you make a good point there because I mean, I think it does come down to the writing because there's really nothing even in the script for that character. Like, I feel like in another version of this, she would be making like random jokes, like wisecracks or like
Yes.
drug jokes or whatever. And like, it's just not like there's nothing about that character, even on a script level, that feels like it's in the same movie as everything else that happens.
I wonder if they had, this is going to sound perhaps sexist here, but I wonder if they had made the character chasing after the daughter a father who was like a bumbling idiot, and then maybe to recompensate the balance of sexes in the movies, made like one of the two drug dealers a female, or maybe use that female cop instead of the other guy as one of the
Yeah.
two drug dealers. Maybe I don't know. They had to have the person going after the kids be like a bigger fool than she was, because she was like
Yeah, I
fucking
agree.
stealth mode ninja mom, and that just didn't fit. So,
Yeah.
um, but it was fun. So I mean, I'd probably give this like maybe a 6.5 is the number I had in my head going into this. I mean, something maybe better than any random movie I'd pick up, or by that I mean I'd enjoy it more than any random movie, but not by a lot. 6.5, I'll say.
All right. I am really not too far off, which is probably not surprising based on our conversation. But I mean, I agree. As I said before, I feel like it's kind of two movies that didn't add up. I was a little disappointed in this just because I really wanted it to go even bigger and harder with the crazy over the top stuff. Like, I don't know if you saw one of my friends left a comment when I posted on Facebook that I was watching this movie.
Mm-mm.
Uh, he left a link to a trailer on YouTube for an apparent forthcoming movie called Crackoon, which
Raccoon.
is
Oh,
about
okay.
Crackoon. It's about a raccoon that does some sort of street drug and then goes on a like wild killing spree. And that looks super low budget. That looks like it could be like a trauma film or something.
Mm,
But it also looks like what I wanted Cocaine Bear to be. Like it
yeah.
looks the the raccoon in that movie looks like it possibly was like a taxidermied actual raccoon that they turned into like a puppet or something for this
Oh
movie.
God.
It just looks terrible. But like I wanted this movie to just be like complete schlock. And I mean, Justin said in his notes that I read that he felt like this movie captured the feel of like, you know, the classic 80s horror schlocky movies. And to me it didn't quite get there. And I really wanted it to. So I actually gave this the lowest of all of the ratings by a small margin. I gave Cocaine Bear a 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10.
Like that averages us out to a 7.13.
Okay. That's
Which is honestly a little higher than I would have thought.
I noticed on Google when you type in the movie, it comes up with the reviews, and there were a lot of 5 star and a lot of 1 star. And I know review bombing is a huge thing in today's world, but it does make me wonder how many people were just like disappointed for what the movie was, and how many people just genuinely loved the movie. But averaging out again seems to be basically
Well, and I mean, like I didn't dislike it. I would watch it again. Like I had enough fun with it that I feel like it was worth my time. But I think it could have been even more fun.
Karen actually was good to watch this with me. Didn't fit in our crazy week we had last week, but it has, I don't know, appeal. I think more than just people who purely like schlocky movies, I guess.
Yeah.
I was also, when I was Googling here, did you hear about Coke Bear?
No, what is that?
So
is it a movie about the Coca-Cola polar bears or?
Whoa, you're so close. This is a real story. This is in the news on April 20th this year. There's Cocaine Bear and Coke Bear. It's a bear who broke into the back of a lady's car and drank 69 cans of pop from the back seat of her car.
Nice.
So Coke Bear versus Cocaine Bear. That could be kind of fun.
That would be kind of interesting. I mean,
what's that I think I said
in our chat that, if they could work out the licensing rights, I would like to see Cocaine Bear versus Kung Fu Panda.
Oh, that could be fun. Both voiced by Jack Black. As Bowser.
I feel like Jack Black is Cocaine Bear, or at least probably was at some point. Please don't sue us, Jack Black.
Oh, please do, Jack Black. Please.
Anyway,
do.
I think that's gonna about do us.
Yeah.
So let's wrap things up here with our best 80s epic soundtrack inspired version of our theme song. I have been Joe. That has been Cody. And thanks for joining us for another episode of
Cocaine. Got cocaine. Occasionally, they're not disagreeing.
Squiddly, guitar.
Rest in peace, Ray Liotta. Carrie Russell's performance.